The day that I supposed to have an interview about a job to go to Ukraine, the war started a second time. It was a full invasion of the war. At that time, didn't have many resources. Financial, I lived with a bunch of roommates, so I couldn't really host people. And I started getting calls from people saying, hey, can you please help us get to Canada? And so I prayed, and those couple of first months were hard because we worked together as a family where my parents mostly would talk and be on a phone with church leaders, nonprofit organization leaders. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I would have a call with family being like, hey, like before we make any decisions, when was the last time you ate? Or when was the last time you drank? When was the last time you breathed? Make sure they have this like basics things. And then I would help them make decision for their family or just listen to like some of their worries.
Welcome to Rekindled Faith. My name is Melanie Bearda.
And I'm Andy Wallens.
Whether you've been wrestling with questions, facing doubt, or simply uninspired, Season 4 is here to welcome you home after a season of wandering.
So pull up a chair and be embraced by the goodness of Christ.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to this week's episode of Rekindled Faith. My name is Melanie Bearda. I am the founder and the host of this podcast. And today we have with us Zlata. Zlata, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Zlata Zolotarova, and I am a Ukrainian living in Canada. I'm currently a youth and young adults pastor at Trinity Church in Kelowna, as well as I love the water here and walks and a lot of tea. I'm a tea drinker. So yeah, that's about me.
I love it. And yes, you are a great inspiration on the tea. I know that I've tasted a few different types of Ukrainian tea that you have shared with me, and they were delicious.
Yes.
Yeah.
I enjoy sharing with people.
Yeah. That's good. I'm so excited to have you here. So listeners, what we're going to be talking about today is resilience and faith through generations. And so first of all, Zlata, I'd love for you to kind of bring us back into the history of your family and how has faith been something that has created resilience in your family?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in a Christian home, but I grew up in Ukraine that was post-Russian or post-USSR times. A lot of my grandparents lived were born during the First World War and then lived throughout the second one, and they kept their faith, and that passed to their kids, who were my parents, as well as to me now and my brother and some of my cousins. From both sides of my parents, the families were Christian. And they, lived. There's very unique stories in each of the sides. So I will share a little bit from each side. But from my mom's side, she grew up with parents that were quite involved in the church. If we talk about my grandma, that's my mom's mom, she became Christian when she was a teenager, but she grew up in extreme poverty and hunger. Her dad left her when she was very little, and her mother worked and a lot. So she was always stayed with her brothers, and her brothers would beat her and take away her food. And because they were quite older, so they would come home drunk and take away her money that her mom gave her for food. So as a young girl, she would always try to find food somewhere. And very interestingly, that there was a Christian lady, couple houses down the road, that would welcome her and feed her food, but later became her spiritual mentor. This is the lady that invited her to come to church. And one day, my grandma decided to visit this Baptist church that this lady was talking about. And as soon as she walked in, she felt like God touched her deeply. And she dedicated her life to the Lord. And when she came home, she shared that with her mom. And instead of being happy in response, she got just like harsh words towards her, being like, how did you go to this Baptist church? Because at that time, only Orthodox churches were recognized, or Catholic in other part of Ukraine. So for her to go to this closed group of people that were weird was, not acceptable. It was very interesting as she was sharing, and as her mom was very angry at her at that moment. My grandma said, no, like, I really want to follow God, and I really want to, just dedicate my life to him. And then she felt like there's something in her room that, like, spiritual, that left the room, and pretty sure that was evil spirits. And her mom felt that as well. That's the way that her mom said, oh, wow, like, I see peace and calmness now in her room. So that's kind of led her to come to church as well. So it was very fascinating. She, interestingly, talking about resilience, she would walk to church 10 kilometers on every Sunday. Yeah, like we drive to church, it's like 10 kilometers. But yeah, when and at that time she would like meet other young adults and they would walk there. And when she was 17, she moved to another city and decided to take a job near the church. And it was very interesting how people there just welcomed her and gave her not just a shelter, but a food and opportunities to do ministry at the church itself. And that's how God brought her out of that hardships. And every time her brothers heard about her coming to church, they would always like make fun of her and beat her. And then she really wanted to go to university after high school, and she wanted to be an English teacher. And because she was a Christian, they actually just said no to her, and they made fun of her. And that was literally the only reason she didn't get into university, because she had the highest marks in the class. And she had a choice that they said, hey, you deny the Lord in front of us right now, or you say yes. You say that, yes, I'm going to follow Jesus, and any educational or good job opportunities are close to you. And she chose to follow the Lord. And every time as grandkids we would come, she would always say, do not ever deny the Lord, because like, even though you want something, God could provide many more things. She wanted to be an English teacher. God opened up opportunities. She never learned English well, but because my parents worked in a lot of charities and with a lot of just American missionaries and Canadian missionaries coming, my grandma had opportunities to interact with Canadians and Americans and learn English through that way. So God bless her in that. And so that's kind of what I learned from her, is God will provide, but also we should probably not deny the Lord. Okay, for my mom's dad side, he grew up with a father named Nikifor. His father was one of the 12 people in his family, and he was one of the younger ones. He was from a family who were kulaks, so they were wealthiest farmers during before USSR times, and then USSR didn't like them, so they would send them to Siberia. So all of his family was kind of persecuted for that, and they were not. I don't think they were Christians from the stories we hear, but he came back from Siberia, and through that time he became a Christian, and they had several kids. It was very interesting that some of the older ladies at the church, they would share how when they were youth, they would come to my great grandfather's house in the middle of the night and knock on the door, and they would say, hey, we would love, can we stay? So he would fit in a very small room 15 youth or young adults for them to stay over. And the reason for why they would knock on the door is because a lot of them walked to church for like 5, 6, 10 kilometers. And they would always, as youth and young adults do, they always wanted to chat and hang out with each other. And in order to go home, that would take 6, 7 kilometers. So instead of that, they would come to my great grandparents' house, and they would be welcoming and hospitable, and no matter of some like persecution from the government as well, they still were able to share things with people. The interesting part is that my great grandmother, so that's my grandfather's mom, she would always share her resources with people. Funny story, they were providing honey for people, or just like they were selling honey. And she would always put aside honey bottles and put it for people in different sizes. So when the youth or young adults come to their house, they didn't just feed them at 2 a.m. They would also give things to go with them as they go home. And the principle she lived with was let not your left hand know what the right hand is doing. So just generosity, and that was just a big thing of hers. And it was interesting because like that's something that I love to do. And it's amazing to see how that was just passed through generations without us even knowing. They raised their children that it is important to give things to people and be willing to share, because God will fulfill all your needs. They never were too rich, but God always provided for them and for people that they were sharing. So that's how my mom was raised, in a family that had that. But it was very interesting how I was chatting with my mom and my aunt, and they said that because their mom had a really tough life, and she stepped into this beautiful family that has a legacy of serving the Lord and being welcoming, they saw how they were able to serve both categories of people. And my grandma would always feel and help people that, just struggling. But my grandpa would be so generous that he would be so, willing to help her with that. And that was passed to us. And I know that sometimes when I didn't have any finances, and whether it was at college, and I knew that if I would share, the Lord will provide for me. And that's one of the lessons I learned. And I've seen how God provide for me. I've seen how God provide for my parents when they didn't have money and they shared. So that's from my mom's side.
That's beautiful. Some things that I was thinking about as you were sharing is how your your mom's mom was such an example, like you even mentioned, an example of generosity and caring for others. And I think when I think about society today, and maybe I'm the only one, but I feel like we fixate on ourselves and what we want in this moment and what benefits us without really thinking of how that's going to impact the generations coming after us in our family line or in society as a whole. So I like that is a bit of a conviction on choosing how we live in this moment, and knowing that even in our secret moments, what we are doing or saying or how we are choosing to live out our life will ultimately impact the people coming up behind us. Yeah, just that selfishness of like being willing to let that go and just serving the Lord. And even the example of her choosing to pursue Christ, despite the fact that she was made fun of, even abused, for that choice of choosing Christ, And I think that a lot of us today, I mean, in North America, I don't know, I've done some traveling. I'm not from other parts of the world, so other people can speak more to this. But I do feel like we live in a comfort zone over here in North America where we don't really know what persecution is like. We don't really know what it means to, lay down our lives and follow Christ, because the most that we get, like not including like social media and the comment section and people saying weird things online, but in our everyday life, I think we are more ready to, just like put a pin in our faith while we go to work or while we're out in society. And then we'll like take that pin out and like go to church on Sunday. And then when it's time to go back to work, we put that pin back in it. And so it's not really making a large impact in the lives of the people around us. Like, I don't know how many people I've worked with that at some point I found out that they were Christian and I had no idea. And like, I've tried to be very, not like trying to like shame people for not being Christian, but I've tried to like step outside of my own comfort zone and be like, yeah, I go to church, or yeah, I'm a Christian. And, oh, I love Jesus so much. Like, he saved my life. Trying to have those conversations in non-Christian spaces, partly because I need to learn how to step outside of that comfort zone and be bold in who I am, because my identity is in Christ. So I just found it super inspiring to listen to you share about your great grandmother and how, despite the fact that she did face some persecution and hard times and like physical abuse for choosing to go to church, it holds me accountable that I shouldn't be complaining if I just want to sleep in on a Sunday and not go to church. Like, she's walking 10 kilometers. My church is like maybe 3 kilometers away from me and I drive my car. So accountability, that's great. But then even with your like great grandfather, even that story about opening up their home to have young people come in and just like sleep wherever for the purpose of
like
at 2 a.m.
Who would be willing to do that now?
Who would be willing? Man, I go through waves of like, okay, the neighborhood kids all love to come over to my house and I love it. And like, their bikes are thrown all around my yard and they're digging in the dirt. And, sometimes I get a little bit frustrated because you're digging up my dahlia tubers, like, back off. Or some of them will come into the house but they're a little bit rough and they're like kind of messing things up. Things are getting broken. And I'm like, okay, this is the Lord's work. We're doing the Lord's work. And then I'm like, no, you guys got to go. Like, I panic because it's like, it is a little chaotic. It's a little overwhelming. But man, we've become so disconnected from the heart of serving people within our community in this aspect. Like, our homes are fortresses that we like lock the door and keep people out. But how many years since Jesus was walking the earth did people just come in, sit down, share a meal in your actual home space? Like, that was a highly valued thing. And I think other cultures value it more than some of us. So even in sharing that too, I read, what's her name? Rosaria Butterfield's book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key. Wow. Talk about conviction of like, you need to open up your house. Like, how are people going to know the love of Christ if you're closing the doors and you're only showing up to church on Sunday?
Yeah. I love that. It's, I think in that we forget that resources that we have and the house that we have is not ours. It was given to us from the Lord and for us to enjoy, but also to welcome others. And so I think that's the point that also my grandparents taught me well, is everything that you have and every resource, including your home, is actually from the Lord. So you can't just have it for yourself. You need to be able to share it with others.
Yeah, I kind of like, even listening to you share that, it's like, the Lord has entrusted these things to us. And I think about that Bible verse where it's like, for those who are given little, they will be given much. And it's like, if you are using what you are given, or even the parable of the coin, and what are you going to do with what the Lord has given? Are you going to just keep it for yourself, or are you going to invest it and try to bring more from it, not for your own selfish gain, but to bring gain to other people? And exactly as you say, like, using your resources to bless people. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I would love to share a little bit about my dad's side.
Yes, go ahead.
It's very interesting because talking about persecution, that's where I learned a lot about, especially importance of having church community, was from my dad's side. Despite of it being sometimes really hard, this church is not always perfect, but my grandma, so that's my dad's mom, grew up in a Christian home, but she was born in 1939, so that's before the Second World War. And her dad was born before the First World War in 1980s. 1880s. And my great grandfather, Nazar, he was a deeply devoted Christian and a farmer. And during he lived during Holodomor years. He would always share his resources. He was also a kulak, like a village leader, and he just was very welcoming to others. But because he was a Christian and not Orthodox Christian, he was a Baptist Christian. He was humiliated and tortured and abused. Some of his friends, they told him, who were in government, they said, "Hey, your job as a leader of villages, you have to go and take away food from people and be angry and bring it all to the government or take it to yourself." He didn't do that. And because of that, he was quite often taken into the government buildings, and he would be beaten, and he would put cigars, people would smoke cigars and put it on his body. It was all kind of torture. And then he would go home. And he would always come home after those situations and teach the kids, being trust in God and never deny him, because he will care for you and provide for you. And it was something he taught kids. And one day he was taken and actually never came home. So we don't know what happened to him. There's assumption that he was probably tortured. Yeah, that was basically my great grandfather. Her father was raised in that kind of understanding of never deny the Lord. And then when USSR came, his son, so Mihailo, so my grandma's dad, because there was so much government kind of situations happened and exchange, as well as because they knew that he was Christian, they were persecuted. So basically, the government would not give my grandma's dad food, even though he had kids. His farm was taken away from him, and my grandma's siblings passed away, the older siblings, because they just didn't have any food. But there was always an option. If you deny the Lord, we'll give you food. And even though, he just had to watch his kids die, they still didn't deny the Lord, which was heartbreaking. And for me, just that was a thought of this is how my ancestor lived, and they dedicated their life. They lived in a Christian way and never denied the Lord. Just amazes me. And for me to, anytime I make a decision in my life, I always think in that moment, being is this for me denying the Lord if I make this decision or if I say this? So basically God provided for them. Later, when there was so many situations, there's government changes, he was able to find a job, and they basically would buy and sell things into the Moscow. So he was a little businessman, and God just provided for him to work at the train station, where he had access to sell some of the goods to Russia. And then my grandmother, growing up in that, seeing how her sibling passed away, she always knew that the Lord will provide, even though it's hard and even if she's going to follow the Lord. So she moved to a different city and was able to get an education, even though it was hard and even though there was persecution. But she, God just provided in amazing ways for her to get accountant education. And later in life, it was actually very useful as God, sometimes we think that their opportunities that God provides in our life is like so amazing and we are so good and it's just because of our skills. But no, for some reason, my grandma from my mom's side was not able to get education, even though they lived in this similar timelines. But for my dad's mom, God provided this fantastic place to get education. So when later she moved to an area called Kirovograd, she received a job as an accountant in kind of like a small city organization that accepted. They had to do financial reports, and then I would have to bring it to the mayor's office about the different areas of the city. So when she worked in that area, one of the her colleagues started persecuting her. It was just a small region of the city, and she started going and spreading rumors that because she goes to this Baptist Christian church, she is bad and we should fire her. And it was very hard on my grandma, but she got fired for that. And it was first couple of years of their marriage. But God was so faithful to her. And one time she was going for a walk with one of her kids, and she met a person that she would always bring reports to in the mayor's office. They started chatting, and she said, I was fired, and because I was Christian, I was fired. So this lady, she said, you know what, you always had such a good reports, and I'm retiring. And my boss told me that if you're not going to bring someone instead of you, you actually will, you can't retire. So she said, I would love to see if you can work in mayor's office to do some financial reporting for the city instead of me. She was hired in that office. And then the lady that persecuted her and got her fired one day actually came and had to report to her now, which is amazing. So my grandma would always teach me, it's first, don't deny the Lord. Secondly, God will actually fight for you. So don't try to fight your battles. He will fight for you. And I feel that's been a theme for my grandparents' ministry. But I'll share a little later. I would love to go back to my grandfather, so my dad's dad story a little bit. My dad's dad, he didn't grow up in a believing home. His father was killed in a war when he was very young. So he was raised by his grandfather, Sidor, and his mom. And his mom was very busy, had to earn a lot of money. So he would a lot stay with the grandfather. And grandfather was a believer, and he came to the Lord when in the adult years, and his wife actually made fun of him for being a Christian when she lived. She passed away before my grandfather was born. But he had this, Bibles were very rare at that time. People would have to come together to actually listen to the word versus but my grandfather, so my grandfather's dad, actually had a Bible. And I don't know where he took it from, but it's a very big, thick Bible, and very old, on a old Slavic language. But this is what he read, and that's what he passed throughout generation, actually, to my brother now, which is exciting. So he gave this Bible to my grandfather, and he said, hey, you should just read it together with me. So my grandfather just wasn't always obedient, and he kind of went to church, but not really, and he would read the Bible sometimes and didn't read, and one day he was protesting going to church and being I'm not going to go to church, you all go, I just want to hang out. And it was just so funny because when he skipped the church, that's when the Lord touched him, his heart. And that's when he stayed home, prayed, and the Lord was like, yeah, you're going to be serving me. And so, yeah, it was fascinating. And then through that, he came to church and had amazing leaders that started mentoring him, helped him to come from just not knowing who Lord is to being a church leader that oversaw different churches and helped them start different ministries. And I love how how they saw a uniqueness in my grandpa and the skills and gifts that God gave him. He was able to do that with others all throughout his church ministry and all his pastoral times. He always saw giftings in people, and he would always help them to do ministry. But how I said, in their ministries, there were several times where they had to step back and not fight the battles. And one of those situations is where when the government would persecute them, there's like so many stories where the government would say, "Hey, you can't do this at church," but then my grandparents would pray, and then the Lord would actually bring those government officials to the Lord or their children to the Lord, and then they had to be okay with this church to exist or this church to do evangelical work because their kids were in the church. So it was fascinating, and how the Lord fought their battles in that, as well as very fascinating when North American financial help started coming into Ukraine. And especially when Ukraine was formed as a country in 1991, officially like proclaimed to be a country, then it was freedom to bring Bibles and books and financial support. And as we all know, church politics could be dirty as well as normal political world. They had to, he sometimes wouldn't get enough financial support because others would steal it. But he would always say, the Lord will provide. We just need to step back. And Lord always provided finances. Lord always provided opportunities to share the gospel. And he was the most loved person in that region because he didn't grab all that financial support to himself or didn't grab all the books and journals that would come from North America, but he would always willing to share and always willing to help others grow versus himself.
I love how both sides of your family were very focused on providing and giving to those around them, that servant heart leadership. I think too about just like what you're sharing about your grandfather and how all these books and all these resources are coming in. And then I think that it speaks volumes when you have somebody within a leadership position that doesn't just take for themselves, but actually gives it over to who can use it and sharing with other people. Like I even think something so small as, it really defines character, but if you're slicing birthday cake and you're the one dishing it out, are you taking the biggest piece for yourself or the smallest piece? It's something so small, like it's just birthday cake. But even like the shopping cart at the grocery store, like, do you just leave it in a random place or are you actually bringing it back to where it belongs? These are things that define your character. And as much as you might think like no one's noticing, but the truth is, first of all, God knows, but also people are aware of how you're representing God, the church, and just in general, like what type of person you are displaying yourself to be, which, we, again, like I said before, like we can be very fixated on ourselves and what we want and what we want to get out of things. But at the end of the day, people can see how we are showing up or failing to show up.
100%. And I think that's kind of what I grew up with is your life also needed to show the Lord, because not always my grandparents had a chance to speak about their faith, but how they lived and how they loved people and generosity, like that's what speaks like volume. And then the people have questions, right? Like of why you do this.
Yeah. And even how you shared about your great-great-grandfather and how he had a Bible, or was it your great-great-grandfather that had the Bible and then your grandfather was able to read the Bible? But Bibles were so rare back then that I mean, again, there's probably like 4, maybe 5 Bibles on my bookshelf that have just been like, my husband's got one, I've got one, I've probably got a couple more. And so we can take for granted the fact that it's really not that long ago that, and like even in some parts of the world still to this day, that people don't have such easy access to scripture, and that they do still have to rely on verbal understandings of scripture, of going and listening to someone share the word. Or thankfully we do have online, and you can access the Bible for free online now. So like there is that option, but still at the heart of it, like we can take for granted what we so freely have over here. Something to think about, to understand the value and the gift that we have in having our own Bibles.
And how many of those Bibles lay unread?
Dust on our Bibles, brand new iPhones.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not a singer. But yes, so true, right? Like how many of those Bibles are not actually being utilized? Yeah, so that's a beautiful story and outline of your family and your ancestors and everything. First of all, thank you for sharing that. I know that you were able to talk with your parents and get some more information prior to this episode. And I mean, it's beautiful. And again, I wonder if some of us take for granted the history of our own families, how much we actually know about those that came before us,
and
our ancestors.
And I love that, like, as I talked to my parents about grandparents, I was able to hear a little bit their stories, because we sometimes don't like know their stories or how that impacted them. And just a little kind of pieces of that is when my father grew up and watching my dad, I'm just like amazed at how he portrayed that well in his life when he had to go to military in he was in that Soviet Union. He was there actually when the Soviet Union fell apart. And there's so many stories of that. But he didn't plan to be a leader in the military because he was a Christian. But Lord fought some battles for him, and he became very respected. And he used to oversee a group, basically everyone that worked in his military unit. So that was his responsibility. And seeing my grandfather, how he shared resources when he, for example, oversaw kitchen in his unit, instead of other like leaders, they would take food for themselves and make like just didn't leave for the cooks to eat, and or for didn't really give it to soldiers. My dad was so good at like sharing resources and making sure that everyone actually is taken care of. And he wasn't rude to them, but he actually made sure that all of them felt comfortable, but it was all of them were in a fair position, and got what they needed. So that was like, he didn't steal, which was like a big thing as well. And God provided so many opportunities. Like when he didn't have enough food because he was giving it away, the Lord provided through church or so through other like people in his life, food or like money or other things, which I saw how he done it now when he's not in military. I know that sometimes we want to have all the resources for ourselves, but my parents would always teach me, no, Zlata, like the Lord is so good to us. So even if we have little, we're going to share it with others. And and with the persecution side, it was very interesting hearing my uncles, my dad's brothers, that they had so many opportunities to deny the Lord in the like school, because my older uncle, he was placed in the middle of his classroom in high school, and the teacher would say to the class, you guys, this is the time to, if you are angry at Jesus, you can say all the things because this is meaning Jesus. So kids would like throw things at my cousin, at my uncle, and would like say bad things. The interesting part is that the Lord also fought that battle, which it was horrible situation. And I don't always say that the Lord fights in this way, but sometimes he does to change our hearts. So basically this teacher that would persecute my uncles, her husband cheated on her with a mistress, and it was in their house, in their garage. They were in the car, turned on the car to make sure it's heat, and he like died in a car, as well as like their home just like was ruined because of that. And there was some like maybe fire that started as well. So it's like it was a horrible situation. This lady actually through that horrible situation came to the Lord and was very nice to the rest of the Christians afterwards. So it was just interesting how that happened.
Yeah. Man, it just makes me think of like a hardened heart, like sharing about that teacher and like how we can have people can have a hardened heart towards Christians. And I mean, Saul in the Bible, like he persecuted Christians because he didn't believe that the Messiah was truly the Messiah. And so he was fighting for what he believed to be right. And in that process, he was brutally murdering Christians left, right, and center. And what happened? Jesus encountered him on the road to Damascus. And like from that point on, Paul became one of like the most influential leaders of the early church. So hardened hearts like the Holy Spirit has the power to soften the heart and to help people to understand and truly comprehend the power of God. I love it. I love your story. I love your family story. And I would also love to hear more about your story. And I mean, you've been in Canada for a while now. So I'd love to hear, obviously, like the war is still happening in Ukraine. What was it like for you when you were living there? What was it like when you came over to Canada? How has it been since you've been here?
I came to Canada first time in grade 9, actually very fascinating. Just the Lord provided for me opportunity to see for 1 year what it looks like to live in Canada and what it looks like to go to a Christian school. And that's where I discovered a passion to serve young people because we didn't have a youth group, and just seeing how like there's youth groups in Canada. And there's like seniors and actually enjoying their life here versus just people are not in Ukraine. People like seniors are miserable because of they don't have enough resources to enjoy their life. Yeah, let alone go things like they don't have enough sometimes money for food and medication. They can't really go somewhere to have a coffee. So I saw a different life in Canada. So when I came to Ukraine back in grade 10, I was so passionate about, hey, I really, really want to serve the Lord, really want to serve people. And then the war started, 2014. And I didn't think that I would have to use my passion right away. But for 4 months in the summer, I remember that my home, my church, and my city became a place for internally displaced people to come. And my home would be a first stop point where we would give them food and clothes and send them to a temporary stay homes. And my job as a 15-year-old was to gather all the kids and make sure they are not crazy, but also that they are they understand what's going on and why they came here. And so that was my job to do with a couple of others. And I learned at that moment where it's like, no, I really feel like this is what God is calling me to is next generation and just serving people in this. There's a uniqueness of when you provide food for people, they're more willing to hear about the Lord. And that's what happened when Jesus fed 5,000, right? Like he gave them food before he preached. So I definitely learned that a lot during 2014. And then I realized that I didn't want to study in Ukraine. So I came to Columbia Bible College in 2015, did my degree there, loved my time, but it was really hard as an international student, just an immigrant. It is really hard to live in a new country. But just as I lived here, God was able also provide for me. And some of the lessons I learned from my grandparents of like, when you follow what Lord wants for you, he will provide. He provided friends that were willing to help me learn English and just maybe correct my language, or friends that he provided finances. As much as I worked during school years, he provided people that just generously donated and wanted to cover my school. He provided some amazing opportunities for me to make connections that later actually became those people became my friends, or those people I did some projects with them, which like only the Lord could provide for that. And then my goal was to get an education in Canada, get my permanent residency documents, and then go back to Ukraine, because I had such a heart to serve Ukrainian people and Ukraine, because that's where I come from. But sometimes the Lord has his own ways and his own plans for us. It was interesting. I wasn't able to get my documents fast because the Canadian government switched immigration law, that none of the theological schools were able to receive permanent resident work documents after, or postgraduate work permit after an education. That happened my third year of being at Columbia Bible College. So I had to figure out what to do next. So I had to work for a local charity here and have a religious worker visa, which government doesn't know what to do with, and no one knows what it is, but it works. So I worked for a charity, and that time, Lord just opened up my eyes of how many needs there are around the world, as well as for me, I got a call from a friend being like, hey, you should do, his name is Marv Penner. He oversees or used to oversee a lot of youth ministry in Canada, as well as like youth, like worker training in Canada. And he said, hey, you should do master's degree with this organization called Coalition in youth ministry. And I said, that's funny. I'm not doing that because I didn't think that I was first fit enough to serve in Canadian church. Secondly, I was told that I wasn't fun enough to be a youth worker, but because of the language barriers. And so, I just thought less of myself, I guess, when the Lord had a little bigger plans. And through through conversations with him, I finished my master's in youth ministry and got to meet amazing youth workers and participate in the church in Canada and continue developing this passion for youth and young adults. And then the day that I was supposed to have an interview about a job to go to Ukraine, the war started. So a second time, it was a full invasion of the war. And it was fascinating because I at that time didn't have many resources. Financial, I lived with a bunch of roommates, so I couldn't really host people. And I started getting calls from people saying, hey, can you please help us get to Canada? And so I prayed, and those couple of first months were hard because we worked together as a family, where my parents mostly would talk and be on a phone with church leaders, nonprofit organization leaders. But when the families would call them and needed someone to like walk them through a decision, whether they're supposed to leave or not, my parents would like bring it to me. So sometimes in the middle of the night, I would have a call with family being like, hey, like before we make any decisions, when was the last time you ate? Or when was the last time you drank? When was the last time you breathed? Like just let's stop. So I would stop people, like make sure they have this like basics things. And then I would help them make decision for their family or just listen to like some of their worries. And then Canada started providing work visas for Ukrainians to come. And I got a call from my parents being like, hey, there are 5 families that are like really want to come and they're ready. And there's one that for sure is ready to come like next week. Can you see if there's someone that could help you, or you could just find them a place to stay? And I told my dad, I was like, I have nothing. I don't know. Like I do know people, but it seems like everyone's living their own life. They won't be able to help much. So my dad said this phrase, which just impacted me a lot and just reminded me of all the lessons I learned from my grandparents, is that, Zlata, do you believe that Ukrainians that calling you and us children of God? And I said, yes, I do. do you think God will provide for them because they're his children? And I said, I guess. Like, if God wants them here, he will do everything to make sure that there are things, for them. So I said, okay, I will just start asking. So I had a really nice coworker at a church I used to work at that I asked him, of like, hey, do you know where I can potentially like get a car, or if you have any friends that would be able to help resettle Ukrainians, or just get some items. And I was amazed at their response. They said, Zlata, just give us a moment, like we'll come to your home in the evening with our friend, and we will just chat with you about it. And a friend that they had was actually your aunt, which is amazing. And she, they came and they gave me, I was amazed. They gave me a list of things that I need for each family to be resettled in Canada, and they gave it to me. And in my mind, I thought, oh, great, thank you. I could have created my own lists. But what they did next impacted me, being like, no, Zlata, like, give us the list. We will worry about we will worry about like items in homes. We will worry, your job is to welcome them and help raise money, but we will help resettle. And I like cried and just, and the Lord through that conversation brought, like, there's one guy that in Abbotsford that has a property that shared his property with the Ukrainians, and gave them rent at a lower rate. And then God mobilized a huge group of people to just start doing home after home after home. And he provided. There was one time I was standing in the middle of everything that was going on, and I remember being like, wow, and people saying thank you to me. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying thank you for me for, because the Lord provided all these resources. So yeah, that's kind of where, and that's out of that the Ukrainian church started. And out of that, we were able to impact a lot of Ukrainian families, whether they were Christians or not Christians. Quite a few people came to the Lord. And now I felt like my time was coming to the end in Abbotsford. The Lord brought me to Kelowna. And I didn't want to. Sometimes we feel like that we have better understanding what we need for our life. And stepping into pastoral ministry was scary because of I was told I was not good enough, or I was told that I wasn't fun enough to be a youth pastor, as well as I thought that working at university would bring me just better pay, better status. But Lord worked in my heart, even though the job of this in this church was offered to me a long time ago. My heart knew that I had to step into this, but my brain didn't. It took Lord a lot of time and patience and grace for me to get there. But yeah, here I am now in Kelowna, serving in the church, using all the lessons I learned from my parents, seeing how he provides all the needs, including an apartment I needed, and an amazing like salary, and amazing like group of people I work with, as well as we just had a puppet theater performance in Kelowna to gather Christian Ukrainians in Kelowna, which Lord is continue working in that.
I love it. I love all of it. But what I was thinking of as you were sharing about your parents passing you the phone and like, here, deal with this, is the same thing that has happened within your generations of like knocks on the door at 2 a.m. and like helping and serving people, no matter the time, no matter the cost, that you're ready and willing to be the hands and feet of Jesus and help. That's beautiful. And the fact that it continues on in your family line, and I'm sure it'll continue in the future generations as well. But not only that, I often think about people of impact and how can make either a positive impact on our story or a negative impact, and like how many people you specifically have impacted as they've come into Canada, as they've started to lay down their roots, coming from a war-torn country, And you know what? Now they have a safe place to settle in, to know that they are cared for and loved for and by God and his children. And I just think that's beautiful and commendable. And I just want to honor you, and I want to honor your family and in your continued obedience to what God has called you to do, and your willingness to lay down your own comforts to serve him and serve his children.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I definitely feel blessed, and a lot of the things that I do, or a lot of blessings that I get in my life, I always thank God for what my ancestors had to come through, and how they showed the way for me to serve the Lord. Is when I have hard situations, even though they're not alive, I always remember those stories being like, this is what they did. And this is what would help me to make the decision to follow the Lord more or help people or
Yeah, and it's beautiful. And I hope for the listeners that have been tuning into this conversation today that you're encouraged and inspired to allow God to show you who you can help serve today, who you can come alongside and just be the hands and feet of Jesus, and to love beyond limit, lay down our own lives and choose to follow Christ no matter the cost, even if it's waking up at 2:00 in the morning or collecting dishes and cars and things for people that have just come into Canada. And I just think that there's a lot in this conversation that can deeply impact the lives of all of us who have had the opportunity to listen to it. And, Zlata, if there's anything you want to just kind of share with the listeners before we head out today, I'd love to hear it.
I would love for them to do a couple things, and for you as listeners to do a couple things. First is just maybe dig into your family history a little more. Whether you're Christian or not, I know that God been doing things in your families and in your generations, and that could impact your faith personally, but also faith of people that will come after you. Secondly, I would say, there are people around the world, but there's also people in your community that have needs, and that you can just provide love of God and impact them. Maybe look around and see who you can serve and help and be that light. And thirdly, don't ever deny the Lord. And we can deny the Lord by many ways, whether not talking about him or in how we act and live our life outside of Sundays. So I would love for us to kind of reflect on that and just say okay, what are some actions that I'm doing, or what are some words I'm saying that could potentially be deniable of Lord.
And read that Bible that's collecting dust.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Melanie. It was really, really appreciate the opportunity to share. And
yeah, I'm happy to have you. It was a great conversation. So thanks so much for taking the time and sharing your story and the story of your family and the story that God has done great things through all of you. Listeners, I would encourage you to connect with us on social media, Rekindled Faith on Instagram. You can also check out our YouTube page and follow us on audio podcasts like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out. And yes, I just pray that you are blessed by this conversation today. Bye for now.